Just a quick little video about replacing a fuel filter of my father-in-law's 2003 F150 with a 5.4 liter Triton motor. And this is a little bit irrelevant, but his is a early 03, so he still had the 2-valve engine in it. So if you ever go to change the coil packs and plugs, which is kind of a nightmare on this motor, like I said, it's a little irrelevant, but luckily he didn't have the 2-part plugs that tend to break off sometimes in the engine. But while I am here, I will show you the little on the fuel rail here towards the back is I guess where you can hook to and check the pressure, make sure your fuel pump's working properly and everything. I did go into it and relieve some pressure before I changed the fuel filter, but I also pulled the emergency switch on it first and cranked the engine over to try to eliminate any pressure in the lines, and that seemed to work really well. This might have been something I didn't even need to fool with because nothing really came out after I did the switch first, but we'll show you a couple little things there. So on the little pressure valve that's on the fuel rail, there is this, when I took the little cover off of it, there was this small, gosh, I don't know if you can see, it's got a little hole in it. I'm not sure exactly what it does, but it popped out, so be careful when if you do take it out, that you don't lose that piece. Like I said, I don't think I needed to relieve the pressure there because I pulled the safety switch, but we'll talk about that here in just one second. So, believe it or not, the father-in-law had the owner's manual on his 03 F150, and it shows the fuel safety switch basically in the toe kick, you know, on the passenger side. So I'm going to show you where it is and how you can use it to relieve pressure before you change the fuel filter. Now, it is down here, and you have to get this cover out. It's got 2 clips on the back of it. Go in here as such, and then I just popped a little 4-plate up just a little bit. It had a couple switches, and let me get down here and try to show you where the switch actually is. Okay, there's a switch, and if you look at the little cylinder on the top of it, you can't get in there with the camera, but there's a little switch inside that little cylindrical part on the top. And if you take in that little slot at the bottom of it and put a screwdriver, you can push it in the up position, which basically you know, turns off the fuel pump, and then crank the engine over and it won't start, and that'll relieve your pressure. As I think this is probably the way I should have just done it and not even fool with anything on the fuel rail. So let's go to the filter real quick and let's see if I can, well, for a little more clarification, I was able to put a screwdriver in that little slot so you'd have a better idea what I was talking about, and just pop that switch up. It's real, you can push it up and down with your finger so you make sure you're, you know, pushing and pulling in the right direction, but right there at the top. Now, I've already got the old one out. A couple things I wanted to point out. Basically, by pulling that switch and cranking the motor over a few times, relieving pressure, I had some drip out, but really nothing bad at all. And a couple things I wanted you to be aware of. This little clamp right here, I thought it went all the way over. It had a bolt on the back side of the this cross member. I can't think of what it's called right there. So anyway, this thing does just snap in here. And oh, a second, let's see. Okay, I don't know if you can see this, but on the bottom there's a little tab. I thought I had to pry that tab out of the way and then slide this thing forward because I thought it enclosed all the way around it, but it doesn't. It just pulls out. So you can pop it out and save yourself a little headache. Now on this rear one, it had the style where you just have to basically pry it up, and then it pretty much releases. Let's see if I can slide it back on here. Once it slides forward so far, you just push it down and it's locked in place. And let's take a look at the front one. So the front one, it does the same thing. When you put it back on, it actually just snaps in place. And then it's got this little clip. Let's see if I can get where you can see it. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to and hold this thing. maybe I can talk about it. Let's see. Oh, there it is. It got it. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so you got to clip it on the front and then just push down the back. She locks in place, and of course reverse when you're taking it off. Now on this one, you know, this blue part's your flexible hose. After I got this clip off, it clips off real easy. I did have to put a little, you know, one of those little retainers on there to pop it off, and I'll talk about that here in just a second on the old one. So if you look at the old filter I just took off, you can see the little bit of fuel that I had. It really wasn't much at all. And on the rear one, when I popped those little white tabs upward, on the bottom they kind of sprung like that and then pushed up. I used my finger on one and a little screwdriver on the other to get it started, and then it just popped right on up. And it just pulled off. On the front one, after that clip was off, I did have to use one of these little tools for popping it off. Now I tried this tool right here. The problem is it needs, the camera over here, it needs more depth, and I just didn't have the clearance to get it in there, so I went and dug up these. I know people say you didn't have as much leverage with these, but it really doesn't take much. I think I took my finger on one side and the screwdriver on the other, and it pushed it in there far enough. Now the line, the blue line, the flexible line, it did not just pop off. Still had to pull it off, so I left it on until I got the filter out of that little bracket. So anyway, I hope that helps you a little bit. Wasn't bad once I relieved the fuel pressure and read up on that, but I just didn't see that many videos that were showing me everything I wanted. And so anyway, we'll push that emergency cutoff switch back down, and we'll crank this thing up and see how she does. Got no fuel squirting out anywhere. There. Fuel squirting out there. How you like the father-in-law's glass packs? Only other thing I wanted to mention, of course, there's an arrow on this thing, tells you which direction fuel needs to flow. And when you're picking out this thing here, for me it worked when the diameter was just about the same size as that ridge you're going to hit. That seemed to work best. The smaller one would fit on it, and then the next size up would slide completely off. I think that one would have been just too small, so I tried to match this same size as this right here. And anyway, I hope that helps a little bit, and when you go to change your fuel filter. Have a good evening.